In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a contact sheet template for picking backgrounds for your extracted business headshots. I'm Mike Price. I'm a business portrait and architectural photographer based in Central Ohio. Most of my business headshots are shot for background extraction. One of the most time-consuming things used to be helping clients pick a digital background. So I came up with a Photoshop template that lets my clients see their headshot on 9 backgrounds at the same time, and you can do this too. Remember, if you need to review a section, you can just back up the video and repeat any of the steps until you master the technique. So let's start at a high level about selecting digital backgrounds for extracted headshots. One way to do this is to show your client a contact sheet of all your backgrounds and ask them, well, which one do you want? You could also offer them a smaller set of choices, which tends to lead the client asking, is that all there is? Or you could just guess and put a background you think the client would like on the image. You end up going round and round, back and forth with your client via email with different guesses until they just grab any background to end the madness. What's missing here is that you're making the client do all the work. They must imagine what their headshot's going to look like when placed on your sample backgrounds. You've given up control of the session by providing your clients with too many choices and not enough knowledge. Your clients become paralyzed with the decision, and you spend a lot of time helping them choose. But wouldn't it be better if your backgrounds were organized into themes, say, old master backgrounds, outdoor foliage, commercial office interiors, etc.? And wouldn't it be better yet if the client could see their headshot with those background choices while they're still at the session? So here's how I do it. First, I build a layer showing a variety of backgrounds. I limit myself to 9 backgrounds per theme. Next, I create placeholders where I'll put the client's extracted headshot. Finally, I add some embellishments and branding. Now, you don't want to create this from scratch for every customer, though. You want something that can be reused for speed and consistency. Let me walk you through creating your own reusable background selector and explain how I use this with my clients. Let's start with something simple and build up. First, I went ahead and chose 9 digital backgrounds from my library that have an outdoor foliage feel. Put those in their own folder. We'll come back to those in a moment. Now go into Photoshop. Make sure your general preferences options of always create smart objects when placing is turned on. While Adobe has this on by default, it may have been turned off, and we need this option checked on. Click OK to save your preferences. Next, create a new rectangular document. I create my documents at 3000 pixels wide by 2400 pixels high. I'm not planning to ever print this, so I just want it big enough to fill my screen. Plus, a small file size will load, update, and save much faster. Next, I want a guide layout to make sure my backgrounds are all equally aligned. I shoot my headshots horizontally in a 3:2 proportion, so to have the contact sheet look the way I want, I use a Photoshop guide layout preset that you can create too. If you prefer vertical headshots, you'll need to calculate the corresponding vertical canvas size to fit your needs. Now, let's insert our 9 outdoor foliage themed images we set aside a few minutes ago. Depending on your background file dimensions, you might have to mask or crop your background images to have a consistent 3:2 proportion that will give your background selector that polished look. So that we can identify which backgrounds we're looking at, let's put a text box below each sample background and name each background something like Foliage 1 through Foliage-9. You'll see in a minute why this is important for you and your client. Now here's a quick pro tip to really make things smooth in the final production. Create a copy of those same 9 full resolution background images into a separate folder and rename them to match the corresponding caption name you selected, like I did for Foliage 1 through Foliage-9. Trust me, changing the full resolution file name to match the caption on the background selector will help you quickly find the file you want to use for that client. Before we go any further, let's get our foliage layer organized. Select the 9 background images and the 9 text caption boxes and group them in Photoshop with Ctrl or Command G. Name this new group, in my example, I call it Foliage Backgrounds. At this point, if you have followed all the steps, you should have a single layer group in your Photoshop Layers palette that looks like this. Take a moment to save your file. The file name isn't critical, but I named mine 3x3 background selector so it's easy to locate later. Now it's time to sprinkle some Photoshop magic to make all this come together. We want to place an extracted headshot image that has a transparent background into the background selector we're building. This headshot is just to help us create the background selector template. It's not one you're ever going to show a client. Make sure this image is the same orientation and proportion as your normal work. Using the Photoshop Place Embedded command, not copy-paste, place this headshot file into your background selector document as the first layer in the layer palette. It should be above all other layers and groups. By using Place Embedded, we're preserving the full height and width of the file, including the transparency areas. Be sure you don't put this headshot layer inside the foliage background group we created a minute ago. Rename this layer Headshot. Resize and reposition the image to fit over one of your sample backgrounds so the subject is composed well with the background. Make sure the bottom of the sample image we just placed in lines up exactly with the bottom of the sample background. Now make 8 duplicates of the Smart Object layer. You can use Control or Command J to do this quickly. The reason for duplicating the Smart Object will be apparent in just a moment. Distribute the Smart Objects so each one fits exactly over a sample background image. Time to get organized again. Take the 8 Smart Object layer copies and group them together with Control or Command G and name this group Headshot Overlays. We only want to put 8 of the Headshot Smart Objects in this group. Now drag the Headshot Overlay group below the single headshot layer on the layer palette. Why 8? Because with the power of Smart Objects, I only need to change one of the Headshot Smart Objects to have that image replicated across all 9 places. There's no need to show the other 8 Smart Objects on the layer palette, so let's tuck them out of the way in a layer group. That way it's easy to find one Smart Object later. Think of a Smart Object as a container that lets me store one copy of the placeholder image in the background selector file. It'll show that image in as many other places as I want without making 8 individual copies of the same image. I can change just one of those Smart Object layers and that change will appear every other place it's used. Right now the light bulb just went on for some of you. If not, hang in there another minute and you'll see how this all comes together. Your preliminary 3x3 background selector template is done. All this preparation leads up to this. I can open that one Smart Object I left outside the Headshot Overlay group and put a different headshot in it. As soon as you save that Smart Object with the new image, it is replicated to the other 8 Smart Objects not as new layers, but as virtual copies all linked together. Photoshop is only saving one version of the headshot image, so the file size of this 3x3 template doesn't get as big as storing 9 individual image layers. I also don't have to manually place the 8 copies of the same headshot when I have a new client image. It happens automatically and is lined up perfectly every time you place a new selected headshot. And there you have it, an easy to update contact sheet showing the digital foliage backgrounds I want to show my clients. But wait, we can make this even better. We can create additional background theme groups like office settings, classic backdrops, or anything else you want to offer your clients. We can then toggle these theme groups on and off to quickly show the client what the same headshot would look like on any other background. Keep in mind, once they see their headshot in this tool, they may want to purchase more than one image. Be ready with add-on pricing when they're excited to buy the same headshot with different backgrounds. This is a great way to make a little more money on an image they've already purchased. Each collection of related backgrounds gets its own layer group. Just make sure each of these new layer groups are below the Headshot Smart Object layer and the Headshot Overlay layer group we created earlier. Feel free to polish your background selector. Make it your own. Put simple borders around your background samples. Add a title to the background theme layers. Add your company branding. The last thing in the creation process is to make a backup of your background selector and store it somewhere safe. If you ever accidentally flatten all the layers in that document, or if something else goes wrong, you can always reach back, get your backup copy, so you don't lose your invested work. So let's talk about how to use your background selector with a client. Focus first on getting a great headshot and helping your client narrow down their pose choices. Once you have their favorite image selected, do a simple select subject in Photoshop and mask out the background. Apply the mask to a layer so you have their headshot on transparency. It's not a perfect extraction, but that's okay. I tell the client we're just using this to select their preferred backgrounds. I tell them I'll do a high quality extraction from the image when I do the final retouching and polishing of their image. Do a select all and copy the image to the clipboard. You can close this image without saving since we don't want to affect the original headshot file. Now open your background selector in Photoshop. Open the Headshot Smart Object layer at the top of the Layer Palette menu by using the Edit Content option in the flyout menu, or click on the Smart Object icon in the lower right corner of the layer's thumbnail. Paste the headshot. Transform the new headshot so it generally matches the same size and position of the headshot that was already there. Make sure the bottom edge of the new headshot is aligned with the bottom of the Smart Object canvas. Delete the layer containing the template headshot. The only headshot you should see now is your client's roughly extracted headshot. Save and close the Smart Object. You should now see the new headshot over all 9 of your backgrounds. Now just move between your different background theme layer groups until you have the headshot background combo they love. Make note of their selected background, offer them other versions with different backgrounds as an add-on for a nominal fee, and wrap up your session. You're done. I limit each theme to 9 background images because it comes down to computing power. Photoshop uses a lot of processing to update the other smart objects. Earlier versions of my personal background selector had 24 smart objects. It took nearly a minute to update the document, even with a high-end laptop and lots of memory. I don't want to entertain my client while I'm waiting for a long update to complete. Plus, I realized I wanted to simplify choices for my client. 24 backgrounds at once were too many. I found that reducing the number of images on a theme layer, but offering multiple themes, was easier for my client. The Photoshop file also updated much faster with different headshots. Hopefully this helps you deliver background replacement projects to your clients more efficiently with a wow factor. Let me know how this works for you, or connect with me if you have any questions.